Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas, and today's date it is uh, I don't know. Oh, I see. This is my HP Chrome box that I'm using, and it's been sitting up on the shelf for a while, so I'm having to try to remember. I'm using this headset, of course, which for quite a while, a whole bunch of my videos were, you know, made with it, and I like. Maybe because it hides my ugly ears, you know. I sort of like using the headset. Um, and I'm using, like I said, this is the Chrome operating system. And I'm just using the record, you know, video thing. And very simple, very easy to use. Um, Over here, this is my two monitors for my Windows 11 over there. I don't know if you can see the download speed, 748 megs. And the down speed over here was, with the Chrome, was, well, you won't be able to see it, I don't think. Oops. No, I want to go to, where do I want to go? I want to go to, speed. Okay. Speedtest.net. And now this is on the Chrome box. Like I said, you can't see it right now. And go. And zoom 700, I mean 100, 150, 160, 196, 175 megs, 180, 187, 190, 202. Okay, 207.9 down, and about 38 up. Um, so I'm back where I'm seeing myself, you know, with the. I have to decide what I'm going to. Let's see. Manicam will not work under Chrome operating system. What I'm planning on doing, I may change my mind. Oh, by the way, this microphone here, I've had trouble with, getting it to work with some times when I set it up, and it did not want to work. And I didn't mess with it a long time. It did not want to work with. Oh, that's the problem. Let me see here. I just want to get it out of my way. By the way, the Logitech that I used, the Brio that I used so long, making videos, and I really, really liked it until I got these two new, uh, cameras, USB cameras. But it here at the last, it hasn't liked my setup or whatever, and it hasn't wanted to work with the Avery Media. Well, not with that, but with the OBS or the software I'm using and things. Just hasn't. It's too bad. I mean, I think it depends on what you're using. Um, um, Now with my, by the way, I mentioned I think in a previous video that what I was thinking about doing is taking and cannibalizing. This is which I've been using for quite a while. The B-Link 1. I call it the B-Link 1 because this one, uh, as you remember, if you've been watching, and if you haven't, shame on you. Um, it came, and I kept it. I should have returned it immediately. Um, with a problem with recording audio. There was noise, tremendous noise, and as soon as I got this and saw what was wrong, I checked online, and they were aware uh, of that problem, and I liked it so much. Uh, I decided to keep it and would fix the problem, work around the problem, and I sort of did it for a while, but it just uh, so what I thought about doing was, cannibalizing this. I'm sure it has an SSD drive in it. I'm guessing. I've forgotten. Anyway, I put it here. I was going to open it up and see what I could take out and put into the HP Chrome box. Then, from listening to some of your comments in the past about as I've been working with various things here, I got a lot of comments like, "Oh, you can get for less than $100," and some people even sent me a link and stuff. You can get an SSD drive that will go in your HP um, Chrome box, um, you know, and put that in. And then I forget what the other comments were, and I'm thinking now, no, I'm not going to because I could hook this back up, or I could hook it up if my ex-wife in there, if she has trouble with, she's using our son's laptop that he never uses, so she's sitting at a you know desk in there in her wheelchair. She's confined to a wheelchair. She got polio when she was about 5 years old and was in the hospital for 8 months. And when we got married, she used crutches, and then we were married for 12 years. And then we were divorced for a long time. God, we've been divorced for I think about 40 years or something. See, I got divorced at 40 years of age, so I'm going to be 82. And but then she got cancer, and after the chemo treatment and all that kind of stuff, she ended up wheelchair bound. Although when she came out of the hospital with after her chemo and all that type of stuff, and they dismissed her, and so the ambulance brought her home and everything, and my our grown son, uh, was living with her at that point, and when she and I was living, well, not in this apartment, but up above the apartment that she had at that time. And when she came home, I said, well, she said, oh, I can't stand, I can't walk or whatever. When she went in for her treatments and that kind of stuff, she could. And I said, we'll hold you on each side, we will, and I said, if you, and she said, oh, my legs are tingling or whatever. And I said, you know, just, I said, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And then the next step is, you know, you'll be wheelchair bound. And the next step after that, you'll be bedfast, and that type of stuff. But she wouldn't listen. But anyway, she gets around and does her, her things in a wheelchair. And, but How did they get on that subject? Anyway, so I'm. Oh, that's right. Yeah, in fact, if this is one of several computers I have here that I'm not using. So if the grown son's laptop that she's using, and she's been using it for a long time, when it goes out on us, you know, although she doesn't want to take the time to learn anything. I mean, she wants to use the computer, but she doesn't want to have to. She doesn't want to learn to, you know. Well, she has to have learned some of the things, pasting and copying and that type of stuff, because she was selling a lot of stuff on eBay. She had a very active account on eBay and was making money that way. When we got divorced, well, a long time ago, she was doing her. I have a picture here someplace. I'll show it to you sometime. Painting. I'm not sure how many. A painting that she did and everything. And she'd go to malls. Well, she was going to malls and setting up, you know, and the shopping malls, not a booth, but they have things for artists go and do different kinds of things, not just painting. It could be, making jewelry, all kinds of stuff. And she would sell some stuff, a small amount, not a lot. And then a long time ago, I forget what kind of computer I gave her. I gave the kids. We had 4 kids, have 4 kids, and you know, my oldest or whatever, I was doing a bulletin board system at the time, and she, uh, you know, I gave her a computer, and she set up a computer bulletin board system, and then her friends set up computer bulletin board systems, and all types of. But then the ex-wife was uh, started selling stuff on, and I told her about eBay, and she started selling stuff on there. And I forget it well, always I don't need to go into all that, but she was selling stuff. Then she went into selling VHS tapes, and she was doing pretty good. She would order them in, cheap, like I don't know, truckloads or whatever, and then she would sell them. And I mean, she wasn't getting rich, but And then she went to DVDs when you know, and then some other stuff. Then finally and it became really hard for her to do it, uh, confined to a wheelchair and what have you. But anyway, so I don't think I should cannibalize this, but I'll remind you which model of HP this is and whatever, and then some of you can jump in there again like you did before and make your recommendation on how much memory I should put in it. I forget how much memory's in it now. Uh, and upgrade it. Or two, what I might do is, you remember I bought a refurbished, where the companies go to hospitals and big, manufacturing places and all this kind of offices and things, where they may have, 10 computers, or they may have 100 computers, or they may have 1,000 computers. And a company, the company will want to, upgrade, improve their things. And a company will come in and they will just buy all of their computers, take them all out for them, haul them away. I've seen hospitals just basically give, hey, come and take these, you know. Um, so, and then they refurbish them. And remember, I just purchased one at people's recommendation. I purchased one, and a Dell, I believe it was, and it came in looking absolutely positive. I think I paid about 200 for it, and it came in it looked brand new in every way. It looked brand new, and I hooked it up, and you know it was working, and then I started installing my software and the uh, SSD drive on it uh, went belly up on me, and there was all kinds of help I could have, but I just returned it to Amazon. I mean, that's you know Amazon. I think they had like a 3 month return policy and that type of stuff. Uh, Maybe what I should do is I was happy with that if it had just had worked. Maybe I should go that route again, and or if I could get the right price for something like that's refurbished and somebody had already installed, say, Linux on it, Mint. Of course, I've installed Linux, dual boot or not dual boot on a whole bunch of computers, but I guess I should just buy the one that comes with, Windows and just go ahead and then maybe, I'm not sure. Uh, but I'm really happy with this setup here right now. It's fast. Um, Now what I'm using is, I don't know how many of these I've shown them. Let's see if I can get this out where you can see it. But here it is. This is $40, a sound card. But I have three or four. Uh, who makes all the sound cards? Sound Blaster. And I own three or four of those different ones, much fancier ones. But this is working just fine. I have the speaker plugged into to it, going to the speaker. By the way, I forget the name now. Oh, it's on it, but I didn't see. I did see a couple. Insignia, I think. Insgnia. I don't even remember buying these things, but they were. Yeah, can you see the? Well, you see my laundry bag on top, but underneath there are four right there, gigantic tub things, plastic that are filled with stuff, and these were in there, and it's these two little tiny speakers, two little tiny speakers, but it comes with the woofer or whatever it is that's on the floor, that like yay big, and I'm getting good sound finally out of, and I have a whole bunch of speakers, USB speakers, you know, speakers you can put outdoors and all kinds of things. But these two little speakers, that's the best audio I've had in a while. And I've mentioned before many times to you, and you're tired of hearing it, that I have really bad hearing, and I really don't need good speakers. By the way, did you see that Netflix? Yeah. No, wait a minute. Was it Netflix or Amazon? I can't remember now. Oh, I think it's Netflix. Just sent. I was going to post a thing, here about it, and they said as part of the no, maybe wait, Prime. Yeah, I think is it Prime. I can't remember now. I didn't. I don't think I made any notes. But as if you're a Prime user, the enhancement to the audio is free, and so of course I'm not sure I even had to click anything to use it. And it did sound. They did some demonstrations. I think I have the. I think I saved that, and if I did, I'll post a video here where you can. But if you have Prime, so it'd be Amazon with it, Amazon Prime, you get that enhancement. And I did, even with my bad hearing, I did notice, unless it's psychological, they tell you, oh, and then you think, oh, yeah. let's see. So I'm just using the the Chrome camera thing. So I'm using the headset for the strictly for the microphone, and I want to keep I think using the Chrome operating system because it is so simple. I mean, and also what I want to do, I'm paying for I'm paying for Amazon photos, Google's photos, and I don't know how many other things. And so then when I go to save something, when I go to use something, that's uh, it'll be like okay, I I used my camera to make a video. Okay, where is it? Okay, is it on Amazon? Uh, you know, Photos, or is it on right now? Of course, it's on both. Or is it on Google Photos right now? Well, which one? Which one uploaded it the fastest, and whatever. And I think I'd just like to keep this. I would just like to keep this Chrome operating system. Missing some things, but but I do want the. If you watch my other videos, uh, that's another thing, by the way. So the Avery Media camera was over here on the operating system before, and but when I went to the Chrome operating system, not recognized. And I missed a little bit, and I thought, wait a minute, and I forget what this is even was it Rave or can't remember the name of it. It's a fantastic camera. You've heard me talk about it repeatedly. By the way, I'll put links below on this for these things. But this is fantastic. So it was over here, and I thought, wait a minute. Anyway, I tried finding, like drivers, will it work, and that type of thing. And then I thought, wait a minute, why don't I just switch to cameras? And uh, so before long, I think this is going to be, where I can show you the. But right now, I'm just. Uh, so what else is new? Um I told you about the storm in a previous video. Uh, we got down well. We're still really low on food, and we ran out of Coke. Uh, I I'm 81. I've got. Uh, I, I hope you've never seen my feet. I try to make sure you've never seen my feet or my legs. Have type 2 diabetes, but they say that people die with diabetes, you die from the legs up, poor circulation or whatever. Going to be 82 here before long. But my son, he walked. Of course, he can walk, and you have to be careful. But he went down and actually he was gonna. I don't know why he didn't get a couple liters of Coke for us, but he came back with cans, two of the 12 packs of cans. Walked back with that. I wouldn't have been able to make it. I'd have had trouble making a carrying a liter of Coke. Um, but he's been a big help. Uh, so also, so food. Today at 11 o'clock, supposedly we've been canceled. They've canceled us several times. The ex-wife loves to order food from, Walmart, and I'm not. I don't. There's some things like their brands. Some of their brands are just because the way that works, is uh, say you buy from Kroger's. you go into Kroger's and they have, let's say, XYZ uh, product, an XYZ product. And, it's good. And, but other companies, contact XYZ products, and then XYZ products at their factory makes up, a Walmart brand or some other brand of, and it's the same thing. And but and some of the stuff isn't. Some of the stuff is uh, different brands. And my ex-wife, I need to stop saying. Well, I don't know. It's confusing. It's confusing. Uh, uh, anyway, we just about ran out of food. But now today they've canceled a couple times. Walmart has, and I mean that's no fault of theirs. The streets get a little icy down here sometimes, and you'd think that we were living in Alaska or something or other. That's I grew up in Missouri. Let's see if something just popped up here. YouTube. Let's see. Popped off the screen so fast I couldn't read it. Um, anyway, my son thought we live in a really nice. Well, I mean it's not fancy or anything. We live in a really nice apartment complex here, and the manager and assistant manager are really, really, really nice. And they got a couple. Of course, it varies. The maintenance guys, seem like they come and go. This company that they're renting the apartment from here, they own apartments all across the United States. So of course the local office here has to take orders about they do raise every time I do sign a new lease, it goes up, and but you know but in every way they've been really, really nice. But um, so where was I on food? Anyway, my son, he's he's the only three of us live in this apartment, and we share the expenses. And uh, my son's the only one that's able to really get out and do something. When I when I go somewhere because of I need to anyway. I've signed up for it. Maybe it's in the mailbox now. I haven't been able to make it at the mailbox, but and my son goes to the mailbox and that kind of stuff. But since he's been going and picking up some stuff at Walgreens and stuff like that, I hate to ask him to do any more. But I may have the permit now from the. I don't think it's called MITS anymore. Called something else. But they will, if you qualify, a doctor has to sign a form, and then they'll come and pick you up. Now you pay more than if you go, a block or two and catch the bus. But the bus stop is up at the top of the. We live kind of on a hill here. Well, on a hill. Well, in the middle of the hill. I have a really hard time reaching the top of the hill. Now going down the hill, not as much, but anyway, my doctor signed the paperwork. I have a total heart block. I have uh, arthritis and all those kinds of stuff. Wasn't any problem. Uh, but so when I get my permit, then I'll be able to go some places, in that manner. I won't be getting it. I mean, it's more expensive than the city bus, but I think the city buses even have the ramp that comes down. I believe for why they do. I know because I've seen people out there in electric wheelchairs that come up. But anyway, they come and pick you up. You have to make the appointment ahead of time. They pick you up, and then you have to tell them what time you want to be picked up from wherever they uh, take you. And they'll take you any place in Fort Worth, and it doesn't have to be just a doctor's office, and they'll take you any place. Um, my ex-wife, when she uses it, I mean, it's always for a doctor's visit or a hospital visit or something. But when I was used to get out, I used to take a little walk early in the morning, like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., or whatever, or walk down to the donut shop or something. And I haven't recently, but there's an apartment complex across from us, and I think they start picking up the MIT service or whatever they're called. I think maybe it's 7 or something. They'd be sitting out there and right across from this apartment complex across. And um, every morning, they 5 days a week, they picked a guy up in a wheelchair and they would take him to work. And then when he got off work, they would bring him home or whatever. But I do need to see a dentist, and I don't want to pay. Well, then the virus hit, and I didn't really want to be riding in an Uber car or whatever the other one's called. I've used them a few times in the past, but I've had really. Uh, I rode with an awful lot of people that were brand new at it. Like I was, they said, "Oh, you're my first." I asked like I'd talk to them, "How long you been doing this?" "Oh, you're my first customer," or whatever. Now, when I scratched my leg and let it get infected because I didn't pay, and I ended up in the hospital for 6 days. And uh, now that lady who took me, they had moved the emergency room since I was there. So she was driving around and around, and hospitals are bad, for where. And finally, I just told her, well, I know the emergency room is right in this area here. Just let me out here. And it was cold weather too, by the way. And I got out, and then I found out they had moved it a few blocks away. So I walked over there, and came in, and they looked at my leg, and they said, "Did you get here by ambulance?" I said, "No, Uber." "You came by Uber?" I said, "Yeah." But my concern, I know people. I mean, I've worked all my life and usually two jobs, a full-time job and a part-time job. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of these Uber drivers, do everything that they should do, clean the car, uh, and that kind of stuff. But there's going to be things that are going to come up. Somebody's an Uber driver. The thing about doing those kind of jobs, say you're an Uber driver, is, you with your cell phone or whatever, you log in that you're available, and then if your wife calls you or something and says, "Hey, could you do such and such for me?" or "I need to do," or whatever, you log out. You take care of that customer, then you log out, then you go home and take care of whatever the thing is, then you can log back, back in. I mean, that's an ideal job. I worked a lot of the years, the secondary job. My full-time job was hospital security, and then my secondary job was contract. So I worked for, well, you can't see it now, but I could turn the thing. But no, for Pinkerton, Burns, all, and I'd go someplace and work maybe Saturday and Sunday a 12-hour shift or something, making just above the minimum wage. Where working hospital security, I made, as security, pretty good money. Uh, but with the Uber drivers, and I don't want to take the chance. I've never been somebody who was worried about it. And I never really, very rarely did I ever get sick. And if I got sick, I usually worked. But the Uber driver, he's going to get a call home. Then he gets delayed, and then he doesn't clean the car good enough or something like that. I'm sure probably most of them do, but I just don't want to take the chance. So now I think this Mitch thing, because when they pick you up, I'm not sure if they're still, they scan you to see if you have a temperature and that type of stuff. And then I'm sure the company, at the end of the day or whatever, you know, gives them time to, clean, or maybe there's another crew that may, the driver may turn the vehicle in, and then the other crew there goes through. And in fact, in this apartment complex, he doesn't live here anymore. I don't think. Maybe he does. Right across from us is a real nice guy, and he's the department director or whatever of the vehicles. And I think that means their city, the buses that are in the city, and the handicapped thing or whatever. He's in charge of, both of those areas, department head or whatever. Um, so what else? Wanted to talk about my son because in three or four of these things, my son. This is sort of a precautionary tale to everybody. Uh, we don't. Whatever I just had for breakfast here, soup. Uh, Precautionary tale. My This is a bad neighborhood, by the way, but this apartment complex almost zero problem. But it's a bad neighborhood. In fact, when my son had to go to a clinic from time to time, and I'd go with him, uh, and we were using Uber to drive us and to pick us up or whatever, and an Uber driver didn't make it after my son's appointment, so we're out there, and somebody pulled in. I guess it was a cab. I think it's been a while. It was a cab, I guess, so it was marked. And I went over and I said, uh, we're waiting for Uber, but they haven't showed up. Could you take it? The guy said, sure. And he said, where are you going? And I said, West Fort Worth. And he said, where, in West Fort Worth? And I told him. And he said, well, if you're going there, you have to prepay. So, because of the neighborhood, and the neighborhood is bad. But we don't have any problem here. Gated community. Although my grandson used to live with me, and he was working early in the morning at at Sears. He's really smart. Uh, he uh, he got his first job because of me. He was whoops. Uh, I'm saying he's really smart. He didn't. I mean, he didn't get that from me. But so I'm not bragging on myself because I'm not really smart. But I worked all my life. Um, and I've talked about that too here before. I feel really sorry for the young people nowadays. There's a lot of opportunities, computers, coding, a lot of things you could learn. You could learn online and a lot of things you can do. But it also there's a lot of the business is cutting people and just doing everything they can. But uh, anyway, I was working for CompUSA, and um, Miami, and my grandson moved from here down there to be with my son and my other son, and then my grandson came down. And he he hadn't finished school. I don't think he graduated. I think my ex-wife says that he did graduate from grade school. I don't think he did. Because I know the police sometimes went by and picked him up at home and took him to school. And we were, my, of course, that's our grandson. But, you know, occasionally my ex-wife would call me, and I'd say there isn't much I can do. There's not much I can do. I said, but what you need to do is just, what he was doing was playing computer games all night long. And I said, tell him he can't do that. You know, and you know, I said, okay, well, then, you know, take his computer away from him. Take his computer away from him. Oh, and can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. I said, pick it up, take it out to the curb, and just toss it out at the curb for the trash man to pick. Oh no, I couldn't do that. Uh, so anyway, when I ended up with my son in Miami, and he uh, now he got his GED. Well, he got his GED down there. That's right. Yeah. Uh, you know, he came down, and actually, my grown son, told him, you come down here, you get your GED right away, and you start going to school, or else, you know. And sure enough, he came down, and he just went. They tested him, and they said, "You're ready for the, you're ready. Okay, come back, and we'll give you the test." And then he, started taking college classes, and then he wanted a job, and I was working at CompUSA, and he applied a few places. He wouldn't listen to me. What do I know? Somebody that had two jobs all his life, welder, worked for the post office department, on and on, worked uh, 30 years hospital security and worked other jobs, he would have, he didn't listen to me. What do I know? I'm an old man. But then I got hit by medical problems down there, and I had to quit CompUSA, uh, or I'd have been pissing on their floor, or else I'd have been running to the bathroom. I was the sole employee who was pricing everything. When I started, there was another uh, lady there and myself, and she wasn't doing anything. So I was, and I they had a great manager down there, and I would hear, and it was a big CompUSA store, and it was like number one in the nation. And the headquarters for CompUSA was in, I think, Carrollton, Texas. Because after I came here, whatever, you know, I was driving down the road or whatever, I saw this is the headquarters for. But anyway, the CompUSA, they're big, filled with management people or whatever. They would have contests and things like that. And that CompUSA down there where I worked, which was not the largest one, it had a good location though, right next to the Dayland Mall. But the manager was a guy, motivator or whatever, fantastic guy. And I would hear him, and they had like one section of the thing was guys in suits who went out to businesses, sold to businesses. all kinds of things, like that. And I'd hear him uh, telling them, like he'd be talking to them, hey, you guys are not doing so, whatever. He says, see that guy over there, Jim? He says, he comes in here, blah, blah, blah. And he may, that was nice. He never, the things he said about me or whatever. But anyway, I got where you know, if I'd have stayed in longer, I'd have been pissing on their floor. So I had to quit. But then I told the manager, I said, my grandson, blah, 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 I said, he's really sharp. And I said, I think he'd do great here, And the guy said, yeah, it's good enough for me, Jim. Send him over. He's got a job, And my grandson went over there. And I was concerned about my because what he was basically doing with his life was, playing games, computer games. And I wasn't sure how he would interact with all these other employees, if he could do, how he would do. And he went over there, and after a few weeks, they put him in charge of uh, the dock and the stocking of everything. So he had, I think, 15 or 20 guys who in the morning did, this. They did other stuff after that, but they did the stocking, and he was in charge of them. And I knew he would be embarrassed, I guess, and seeing me, whatever. I didn't go over for a long time, but finally I needed something from CompUSA, and well, I think the first time I kind of snuck in and snuck out, and then the next time that I went over, he came over, and he was able to do what he needed. He knew what he needed to do, and could do it. So, and then eventually, CompUSA went out of business. Oh, but what was interesting was, it had a good location, but the CompUSA, and it was like number one usually, except sometimes Puerto Rico would beat it out because I think Puerto Rico may have only had one CompUSA, but like when the iPad came, was it the iPad, the little thing that had the music you could play music on? When they came out with that, um, the store that sold the most, and I forget exactly how the rules worked, the store that sold the most in the United States, now maybe there was a second place and a third place too. The our store came in number one, and then there were some other things like that that would happen, and our store would come in. This store would come in number because of the manager. I mean, the guy really knew how to motivate people. Um, and so, like I got I had an iPad. Was it the iPad? Plays music anyway. And of course, I gave it to my grandson. That's before he went to work for him, and he carried that for a long, long time. And you know, he ended up coming back here because his mother came over from Sweden, and so he came over and joined her. Uh, and then here, he went to work, Sears had an opening, and he started working there, and almost immediately he was, some level of a supervisor, then some level of a supervisor, and then before he was in charge of, I don't know what area, he was in charge of one area. And then, then the word came out that Sears was, having problems going out of business probably. And they, were letting people go and everything. Then, but they wanted a manager or an assistant manager or something at another Sears in another, I forget, here in the area, but another, it wasn't Fort Worth, it was another. And I told him, I said, they're going out of business, And he went over there, rented it, an apartment, and spent a bunch of money, like renting the apartment and all that kind of stuff. And then before long, they went out of business. And sometimes you need to listen to your elders, and sometimes you need to. So anyway, our grown son, my ex-wife, our grown son here, and I don't know what we would do, without him. But uh, he, well, his room is like a hazmat area, and he just leaves stuff, you know, clothes on the floor. I mean, he just does that kind of stuff, and I'm like, oh my God. But uh, so, and he said that he said his billfold was stolen. He never has company, but he did have somebody come over and spend an hour or two. He was talking to him in his room, and well, like in his room, he'll just have his billfold laying, or he'll have money. He'll have some money in the chair. I mean, not a lot of money or anything, but money. And I don't think people should leave, like you have change in your car so you can go through a toll thing. I don't think people should be leaving change in their, you know, okay, you don't agree with me, but don't have change laying in the thing and then take your car someplace and you know have somebody park your car for you or something like that. And two, like when I was working hospital security and I was a supervisor at this one hospital or whatever, and it was during the Republican convention when it was held in Kansas City, Missouri. And so we had to hire extra contract security, and so they were there. So we had contract. I don't know if it was Burns, Pinkerton. I think it might have been Wells Fargo security. And I was working, I guess, day shift. I was supervisor of the day shift. I came in, and the midnight shift said, "Oh, the Wells Fargo guard, he passed out, and we took him to the emergency room, but then they checked him and said he was okay." And I said, well, if he works tonight, I said, ask him if he has money for lunch. And the guy was like, and see, I'd worked full-time security for years and for Burns, Pinkerton, Wells Fargo, and a whole bunch of other. I said, ask him if he has money for lunch. And he says, oh, okay. So when I came in the next day, the security officer said, Jim, you were right. He said, when he came in, I asked him, do you have money for lunch? And he said, no, he didn't have money for lunch. That he didn't get his paycheck for a few days or something like that. He said, we bought him lunch and everything. We'll make sure, and whatever. And that's, you know, I'm not smart, but, you learn. Some people don't learn. I found that out too. Like I work some places where, man, I mean, even I worked and there was somebody hired in, when I was in charge of security or whatever. And there'd be somebody that came in, had a college degree um, but and they'd be smart. Even if they didn't have a college degree, they would be smart, smarter than I was. But then they would make the most insanely stupid things. And part of their problem was they knew they were smart and they knew I was dumb, I guess. And they wouldn't listen when they were like I would tell them, hey, and no, no, okay. Uh, let's see. Well, I was going to tell you about the Cascade Alert System and give you an example of something like. Just take my word for it. Well, if you're the smart one, take my word for it. listen when somebody, even if the person's old, even if the person is not too smart, and especially if they tell you, oh no, wait, this is um, listen to them. And I've seen some really people who are really smart and talented and whatever, and they just do the dumbest thing. I got to tell you this one. This was a director of security. Well, we had a direct. I worked for this one hospital for 18 years. So anyway, this one director of security there who had been there, he'd been a Kansas City, Missouri police officer. He rose in rank. He was director of security at, I don't think it was called Truman Medical Center then. I think it was General Hospital. And he was in charge of security there. And I heard about him. And, you know, like there was a Kansas City, Missouri police officer who, at the hospital that I was working at, said, "Do you know or first he says, hey, you guys here have," I said, he says, "You have a good security department here." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And he says, over at General Hospital, he says, he didn't say he was in charge. He says, "We have a ward that's, prisoners. And there's two police officers there at all times with these guys. And he says, two of these guys jumped me. And there were hospital security officers there. And I was waiting for them to come in and to assist me, and they didn't. He said I had to handle these two guys all by myself. So then after I got them, restrained and all that type of stuff, I said, "What's wrong with you guys? Why didn't you help me?" And they said, "Oh, we're not allowed to do that." I said, "What? What do you mean you're not allowed to do that?" He says, "Our director of security says, we can't do that. We're not supposed to do that." He said, "I went and talked to the hospital's, security director, and he says he was a high-ranking Kansas City, Missouri police officer who's retired. And he told me, yeah, that's what I told them. I don't want, And anyway, at this point or whatever, I said, well, I can't, I know you're telling the truth. I know you're not lying. I said, I can't believe that. I said, I don't care. Every security officer that I know, hospital security officer or not, would jump in, and no matter what their boss said, they would jump in and help a police officer. I said, I just find it so hard to believe. And he said, yeah. So anyway, by that, years go by, and I end up working at this other hospital. And guess it was a guy from, and yeah, uh, unbelievable. Then he got replaced by a new director of security eventually. And the guy who came in was from a sergeant from a small police department, and he had a degree and everything in law enforcement or something. And he came in. Now there was at that hospital 25 security officers, and me being one of them. And it turned out that while I was there, 24 of those security officers thought that I didn't like this new director of security. No, I liked him. He came in and he did things. He changed things. He, set up a computer system for us at Everett, no matter what hospital you worked at. He did a lot of things. But when he did some things, because of by that time I was working at a small hospital that was owned by, I was working out there. But because there was two of us working out there. But I was the one who ended up being, the thing would change. Down at the main hospital, they had 3 shifts, so, different people would end up on the thing. But because I was from that one hospital, I ended up on it all the time. And so uh, things would come up occasionally, and I would tell this, uh, director of security, no, that's not going to work, or whatever. And he didn't like it because, well, he was a smart guy, had a degree and all that kind of stuff. but he just wouldn't listen. But of course, the other thing is there was a guy down at the main hospital who, you know, was a supervisor, like the charge officer, the main supervisor of security, other than the director of security. And he had, as soon as this new guy hired in, uh, this guy's first, the guy that he was, as soon as this guy came in, he was able to introduce him to all the, the department heads and all that kind of stuff, which would be a big help. And he did that for this, guy. But he also spent every minute, anytime anything came up, he would point, this guy would point me out as, oh, Jim Howard, he's no good. So the director of security was, grateful, I'm sure, that he could go to the hospital. Hospital's a big thing. And this guy and Charlie, uh, he was one of those people. I ran into a few of them before, like when I worked for years at the Dart Truck Company. The personnel manager. Now, I'm not sure if right next door to us was the Kenworth Truck Company, manufacturing. They were side by side. I'm guessing maybe that they had separate human resources or personnel directors. Maybe they didn't. Let's assume that anyway. I mean, there was, I don't know, 100 people or so working on building the Dart trucks. I don't know how many. I'm talking just a shift or something, I don't know how many were working in the Kenworth division. Although I had enough enough seniority, eventually I could have gone over there because they went by seniority, and I had enough that I could have gone over for a job with a booth, my own little welding machine. I mean, it would have been a good job, but I had started on the midnight shift, went to the second shift, then made it to the day shift, and if I had gone over there, I would have had to go to the second shift. And so I didn't go over there, but it would have been a nice job, my own little booth, my own little, hoist and stuff. But, well, anyway, this human resources director at uh, Dart Truck Company, so he was, he knew everybody's name. I don't know how I have trouble remembering my own name. People, if you've been watching my video, like I don't even know well, I do know now, I'm 81. But I've had trouble remembering how old, what my birth date is. But anyway, and so this Charlie at this other hospital when I was working at that, the hospital's a big place. He knew all the employees' names. He knew their husbands or wives' names. He knew their kids' names. And so that was a tremendous, he was an asshole, by the way, this guy. But anyway, that was a tremendous asset for him and an asset for this new director of security that came in to work there. And so I guess he was inclined to believe, you'd think he would see through this guy. But anyway, so anyway, I was on this committee, one person from each shift at the hospital and one from research at Belton Hospital. So I was on this thing. And several times the director of security, he came up with good stuff. He did fantastic stuff. The other director of security for all those years, if somebody was attacked or something happened on the day shift, when the second shift came in or the third shift, there was no report or nothing was said, and the director of security would tell, don't tell the other shift, don't tell this other person, don't do, and he kept it from administration. He kept it from administration. And he got by with that for forever until he decided to retire because of some illness. As an example, we were having a departmental meeting, 25 of us there. And we had one security officer who was a female, and she worked at the nursing dorm at night. Uh, and she said, "Sir, what about this nurse, student nurse who was walking through the tunnel and got attacked by a man?" And the director of security, there was a tunnel from the hospital that went underneath the road that went right into the nursing, and he said, the director of security says, "God damn it, I don't want anybody to know about that." And I immediately, but I think the other guys were too, even though I had some problems with some of those guys. Yeah, I thought, Jesus Christ, if she's if she says she was attacked or whatever happened, you know, a report needs to be made, and a report should go to administration about it. But of course, it didn't. And he didn't even want us to know, and I want to know because the walk through that tunnel was very short, underneath a road. a But I want to know, and all the other security officers need to know because now he's saying she's lying, and I don't think she was lying. That's just the way he operated. But I want to know too because then, in the case if when I get a call to escort somebody through that tunnel, then I'm going to be taking the radio and calling, dispatch and saying I'll be making an escort, whatever we called it. I guess the tunnel maybe. Okay, I'm escorting somebody through a female through the tunnel, and they would log, the date and the time, and then I would call, you know, okay, I'm done, and it'd be like probably, 30, probably wouldn't even be a minute maybe or something, but it would be logged, that, and I mean, that's just unbelievable that he did the type of things like that he did. But now the new director of security, when he came in immediately, you know, reports were available for everybody to see. We had access to, when I was working at a small hospital. But I worked at the small hospital out there, and the main hospital, which when I started working hospital security, I worked at a hospital where we had 10 security officers. We had two shot uh, in the line of duty. First one permanently disabled, and then about a year later, the other one was John Gallagos was shot, and he managed to shoot the other guy that shot him. And that was the number one. That was the worst area in Kansas City, Missouri. Uh, then when I moved to another hospital, it was in the same general area, but it was not as bad. Although, anyway, I worked at that hospital and started on the day shift. Then they needed eventually. I didn't. I just did my job, and 6 months there, I got called up to the security director's office to get my merit review. And I thought, Jesus Christ, this guy's in fucking love with me. Most fantastic, and he was correct, you know, about me. And then later on, there was an opening for supervisor on the second shift, and I wanted to stay on days. I had a family. I had 4 kids. No, I think I had 2 at that point. I think. Uh, and I didn't want to go, and he wanted me to go really bad. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go. And then finally, and he knew how to. He said, "Jim, there's a problem on the second shift. Could you go over just long enough to take care of the problem? There's 2 guys there, and they're UMKC police officers, University of Missouri at Kansas City or whatever, and they have their own police departments, their own police department." And then he said, "You can come back to this." So I go over on the second shift, and I'm not sure if both of them were doing, but one was doing it for sure. Apparently, he would go to, I don't know how he did it, you know, go to UMKC, time in, take a UMKC police car, and drive it over to Trent or to Trinity Hospital's parking lot and park it. And I don't know. I mean, he didn't take off. Well, he didn't drive. But so then he was doing stuff like young guy, and he was doing stuff like he would walk a nurse out to the parking lot at night with this second shift. And he would walk her out, and then he would get in the car with her, and they would sit in the car for a while out there in the parking lot or whatever. So anyway, I called him up to the office finally, and I said, and he said, well, Mr. Ross, the director of security, and it was true. Mr. Ross wants us to socialize with the employees and get to know them and whatever. And I said, I don't care what Mr. Ross says. You're working for me on the second shift or whatever. Escort the nurse outside to the parking lot. Don't get in the car with her. Stand there until you make sure she drives out of the parking lot and has left. Don't. And he says, "What, Mr. I said, I don't care. You're working for me." And so he stopped doing that. And then what was he doing? I forget what it was. So finally, I just went to the director of security and I said, Mr. Ross, I said, we got two guys who are working, for UMKC on the second shift. I said, can I tell them they have a choice? They can work for us full time, or they can work for UMKC full time. And I said, or else. And he says, yes. So I told them, and the one guy, they were both young. The one guy quit. The second guy told me he quit. He didn't. But anyway, he wasn't as arrogant as the other guy. But um, uh, okay, I got sidetracked. Oh, yeah, I know what I was going to say. And that wasn't exactly what I was going to say, but when I was, working, finally, when I was working, I went to another hospital eventually and worked there 5 years till they built a hospital out in the town that I lived in. And I had to fight. I had to do a grievance against the old director of security and the one that I told you about that was so bad. And then I ended up at I could almost see the hospital or almost see where I lived from the hospital. And, but I ended up on that committee. And uh, as an example of this guy who was a good, well, I want to mention two things. Anyway, there was more than that, but uh, anyway, this guy, you know, director of security, he did a good job, but he wouldn't listen because, well, one, I think I'd been badmouthed by Charlie, and but so anyway, I'm on this committee, and I was on the committee when the form used to evaluate an employee, security officer in this case, was, and the director of security, he actually listened to me on a couple points. I was surprised. Thought things that I thought were important, and a way to do things. And but then he comes up with this. Okay, well, uh, he felt like his supervisors weren't critical enough of, which I disagreed with, but I didn't voice a disagreement on that because I knew that wouldn't go anywhere. I don't think that it's a good idea to to make. He wanted his supervisors to find something on somebody, so that when they did the evaluation, like it was stupid of him, the director of security, whatever. But then he brought up this thing. He says, okay, well, on the police department that I well, on all police departments, uh, we have this form. When you make contact with somebody, then you fill this form out. I can't remember now. I was on reserve police department for I think 7 or 8 or 9 years. I can't remember. But he said, and you know, you fill this form out every time you have contact with somebody. Then we have these, you know, things, and we can pull it up, you know, and we can, you know, do this kind of thing. And he said, so, you know, and the way we're going to do this is if you do one of these forms, you'll get 10 points. I forget what it was. He had it figured out, you know, 10 points or whatever, something like that. But if you don't get all the information, if you don't get, you know, their date of birth and social security number, and I forget what, you know, what it was. And I said, sir, that's a bad idea. Uh, I said, you're going to have, you know, this is a bad neighborhood. By that time, this was the worst neighborhood, you know. And I said, we have contacts with a lot of people, and it's always, you know, sometimes volatile. It's a situation that you can have. It can go bad real quick. And I said, you know, if you get the information, you know, that you need, but if you're going to get all this information, it's going to be bad. And so then he put it into effect. And so then the security officers were having, you know, they'd stop somebody or whatever, you know, what's your name? Uh, Bill Brown. Okay, Bill Brown. Okay, what's your date of birth? Okay, you know, date of birth. Okay. I forget what else. But if you didn't have on the guy's date of birth, or if you didn't have something rather, you wouldn't get, oh, and you had to have so many points on your merit review. Okay, you got to get so many points in order to, you know, so, and I told him in this thing, I said, these guys, all they're going to be caring about is, are they getting enough points, you know, on there, and the supervisor is going to be making sure, do you have the points, you know, because, you know, this kind of stuff. And of course, the director of security, no, shot me down, you know, on that. No, no, went ahead with his thing. And so then at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning at the main hospital, and a a guy is a white guy, by the way. I'm not sure he was white. That was sort of a, you know, but anyway, I think he was sitting in his car out there at 2 o'clock in the morning, and a security officer goes over and says, "Can I help you?" And the guy says, I'm picking up my wife. She works in, you know, ICU or whatever, and she'll be coming out in a minute. Okay, can I get your name? Can I? And so the guy refused to give him something. You know, okay, you got my name, you got my date of birth. I'm not giving you any more information. And then by then, uh, another security officer comes over. You know, so there might have been three. I don't know. And so they end up dragging this guy out of his car and breaking his arm. And then the guy's wife was one of our nurses. You know, she came out, and there was her husband on the ground with the police, with the security on top of him or whatever. And so then at our next meeting of, you know, the little committee, and the director, you know, why are we having these problems? Why did the officers, I mean, nothing happened to them, you know, whatever. But, you know, why? And I said, because you're making them, the only thing they're thinking about is, am I going to get points for, you know, this, uh, I forget what we called it in the police department, you know. And of course he didn't, you know, he didn't agree with me. But then finally he did change, you know, he changed the thing. So, oh wow. Well, it's only 19 minutes past an hour. What was the other thing I wanted to mention? Oh, okay. It'll pop into my mind later on. It was an important thing to me, you know, an example or something, but of an example of listen. Oh, I know what it was. I'm going to give it to you. Okay. I had worked at one hospital for 5.5 years. We had two shootings, there. And I've talked about that, so I won't talk about it again. I don't think we would have had a second shooting, you know, there if the hospital administrator would have listened to me. Okay, but I'll skip that. Next hospital I worked there uh, over 5 years. And the next hospital I went to, I spent 5 years working. By that time, by the time I got there, the worst area in Kent was a new hospital, the third hospital that I went to. And anyway, I worked there 5 years, and then I had to do a grievance, and I shouldn't have had to. Because somebody just wanted to screw with me, but I did the grievance, and I went out to the new hospital, which was in a small town, whatever. Um, but there for several years, I was making more arrests at the small hospital. I shouldn't have been than they were making down at the main hospital. That was in the worst part. But anyway, new security officers are hired in from time to time at the main hospital. They don't know me. They see me once every 3 or 4 months and then too, they got Charlie there telling them, oh, this guy's an asshole. But anyway, so we had a cascade alert system where if something happens, a hospital calls security at two other hospitals. And then each of these hospitals call security at two other, and before long, in an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, all the hospitals know about the situation. But, oh, yeah, I wanted to mention that. I never told anybody, but that originated at the second hospital that I worked at. Not my idea. The director of security came up with it because Denver did something like that, hospital security there. But he came up with the plan, and he got the support of Don Bing, who was director of security at Baptist Hospital. And but Mr. Ross came to me, Jim, and said, uh, "Go over this for me. Look at it. Tell me what you think of it, and if any changes need to be made." So I looked at it, and then the only thing I really said was, "Well, you know, you're you have your graft here that this hospital is to call, you know, two other hospitals. Well, there's no security there at midnight, so you need to rearrange, so they couldn't call something like that. But so anyway, the guys from the main hospital would call out quite often, and I'd worked with some of them, but mainly the new guys. They'd call out there, "Oh, I don't know why I need to call you. You got it made out there. Nothing happens out there, and I don't know why." And by that time, our new director of security, by the way, had come up with a computer system, where all of us could enter, the information or pull information up on incidents. I mean, there was medical information on there and all that kind of stuff, but security had their own section. And when we arrested somebody or whatever incident or whatever, it went in the computer. Anyway, these guys would call. Uh, oh, I don't know why we need to call you out there. You got it made. There's nothing going on out there, whatever. And there's this guy who grabbed some medication over at, Baptist Hospital or whatever. And so I'm calling to tell you. And I said, what's the guy's name? And he said, such and such. And I said, well, if you look in the report thing on our computer, I arrested him out here. And that happened repeatedly. These guys would call out, and come on, that's, anyway, I guess that's enough of me raving because I'm thinking of some other things popping in my head. I don't think I do it very much anymore, but I think about some of the things. I'm a big believer in unions, by the way. I think I think we need a union clause or whatever. If you're retired and you're dreaming about your job, I think the company should have to pay you. I'm kidding, I'm kidding, of course. Am I? I think they should have to pay you. I guess we couldn't prove that we were dreaming about the. Anyway, if we could, I think the company should have to pay us. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, please subscribe. And please use a link below if there's one so that I get some money from Amazon. I spend so much money with them, I'd like to get a commission when you buy something. It doesn't cost you anything. Thank you very much.